All right, everybody, welcome into episode 190 of the Leaning into Leadership podcast. My guest on the show today is Dr. Joe Famularo. And I'll tell you what, man, Joe is going to share with us on this episode a leadership framework that could truly transform the way you lead, both personally and professionally. Now, I'll tell you this about Joe. He is a seasoned educator. He is a superintendent. He is someone who has spent over 3 decades in the same school district. Now, I know what you're thinking, right? Like, how does someone stay in one place for that long and just continue to thrive? Well, Joe has some incredible insights that he's going to share about building a culture of trust, about continuous improvement, and ultimately about intentional leadership. You know how much that means to me, that intentional leadership. In this episode also, Joe is going to introduce us to his IOU Leadership Framework, which stands for Inward, Outward, and Upward Leadership. It's a really powerful way to align your values, your relationships, and your impact to create that thriving school culture. So whether you're a principal, district leader, or just somebody aspiring to grow in leadership, you are going to find so much value in this particular episode. We're also going to talk about that move a little bit further. We're going to talk more and more about that intentional leadership. And what Joe's going to share with us is we want to make sure that we build school culture that doesn't happen by accident. And so he'll share his PH2E Life Propeller Assessment. And that thing can really help identify the key areas that we need for growth. So really, this is going to be awesome, folks. Stick around. This conversation is packed with some incredible insights, some really actionable strategies, things you can go and do right away. And don't forget, if you love the show, if you enjoy what you hear, if you're coming back to me on a regular basis, and you continue to be one of those people that just listen to the show over and over, please do me a favor. Take a moment, go and leave us a review. On whatever podcast platform that you are listening, go in, hit that 5 stars, write a review. I'd love to hear your feedback, but just as much, those reviews help to really drive that algorithm to get the podcast in front of that many more people. So if you're enjoying the show, if you love the show, please share the show with other people who definitely could benefit from leaning into leadership. All right. So with that said, it is time for us to dive into my conversation with Dr. Joe Famularo. So today on the podcast, my guest is Dr. Joe Famularo, and I'm really excited about this conversation because Joe and I have been sitting here talking for a few minutes. We've had previous conversations, and what we've been talking about, we probably should have hit the record button from the very beginning. We were talking about his framework for IOU leadership. And there's so many great pieces in here. But one of the things he said right before I hit the record button, folks, was that we have to know ourselves. And, you know, we're early still in 2025, and many of us still maybe have that one word that we've chosen for the year, and we're sticking to that, or we have a resolution, or we're trying to focus on improving our physical health or more exercise or whatever it is that we might be working on. And that comes from that space of knowing ourselves. And that just really resonated with me. So I'm excited to jump into this conversation today with Joe. But first, before we do that, Joe, let me just welcome you in. Thanks for joining me here on Leading into Leadership.
Darrin, I'm very excited, big fan of all your work, and looking forward to the conversation. Thanks.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And I would tell you this, you know, folks, if you're not watching it on YouTube, just go pop over to the YouTube channel just so you could see Joe's background. I mean, it is spectacular. I absolutely love it. There's a lot to be said for your backdrop when you are recording on when you're recording a podcast and the video is included. So make sure you check that stuff out. So Joe, let's do this. Just really quick, share with my listeners just a little bit about who you are, about maybe a little bit of your journey, whatever piece you feel like you want to share to maybe kind of set us up for this conversation.
Yeah, great, sure. And the backdrop, you try to represent who you are, right? And that's a good tie-in, and I try to put things that are important to me. But I would say I'm a teacher. I like to always start off a teacher and a learner. I really believe in continuous improvement and how do we get ourselves to the next level. And not that we always think when we hear, oh, you need to improve, that we're bad. No, we're good. And how do we get better? And then when we get there, how do we get to the next level? So I've been started off as a teacher in my district. Been there 34 years, but the last 18 has been superintendent. Great environment, love it there, and taught many different subjects, reading, special ed. I have 5 certifications. Just music is my passion as well, so I taught music for a while. Like to incorporate that in everything I do. But I just love being around educators. We have the best team, very, recognized, and just love writing about it and discussing it and having good discussions about leadership and how do we continuously improve in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I want to make sure we don't lose that. So you've been in the same district your entire career.
Mm-hmm.
This would certainly qualify you probably as a unicorn, because that doesn't happen very often. But from teacher all the way up through superintendent, what is the secret to that type of longevity in one place?
Yeah, I've been asked that a lot, and yeah, started as a teacher, then moved to an assistant principal, director, principal, assistant soup, and then again soup. And I think that the trick is that you realize that it's a team effort, that when you're side by side as a teacher, then you become, say, a principal, that you don't take on that, oh, I know everything about no, you left that. Now they're the experts. And that's important, that you reach out. We're a team. You need to have relationships, that outward living that we're going to talk about, the trust that you build. And then being side by side with all my principals and then becoming the assistant soup. Now, again, technically you're supervising them. But again, you need to go back to them, even though you may think, have trust, work with your team, that they're the experts. And it's just about building a culture. And that's what it's all about, building a culture of trust. If there's trust, things move fast, things move quickly. Everyone is reaching their potential and more. If it's not a culture of trust, and everybody's on edge, and then you don't get the best out of everyone. There's a great saying that you could buy people's back, but you can't buy their heart, right? They'll come, do their job, and leave, but if you want to buy their heart and work together, that's built on that trust factor, so you get as much as you can. So I try to create that environment where we're a team. It's you're the experts, and let's get to that next level. So it's been a great experience. I love going every day. I'm just very fortunate and blessed to be in this position.
So you and I were talking before we hit the record button, and you were sharing it, and we're going to get to the IOU leadership, IOU culture, all of that stuff here in just a little bit. But I know that at least a piece of that comes from an anchor, if I can steal one of your words, you being anchored very much in your whole district, being anchored in Leader in Me, the 7 Habits through Covey. I'm curious, and I work with a number of districts that have done similar work. I think it's fantastic work. I'm curious, when did that Leader in Me work, the Covey work, come into your district? Let's start with that. Let's start with kind of how that came about.
It's a great question, because it started when the book came out. So 1990, 89, 90, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People came out, and I got married in 89. We went on a vacation, and I brought that book with me like in 91, 92, and I read it, and it changed my life, really. It really just, this whole idea of being principle-centered. My studies, I've heard about it, but it really put everything together. So when I got back and I was teaching, I started incorporating that in the classroom. And then when I became principal, that's when I really started discussing it with the staff. Now, there was no Leader in Me at that time, so we really were innovative. How do we incorporate? How do we, use this information with kids? And we started doing it. We had our core values, and so we really came up with a program that was different. It's that in Leader in Me, but using those principles. And then later on, Leader in Me came about. got connected with Franklin Covey. We have a great relationship. So we do have a little twist to it, and they love that it was sort of a parallel to A.B. Combs, which similarly happened there, and that's how The Leader in Me came about. So we do have a little variation of it, but it's principle centered. So how the strategy doesn't matter as long as you have the principles. So that's been really the foundation of what we do, and that's how the 7 habits came into about. But I've used so many pieces, especially the mission statement with family, the 7 habits of highly effective families. Very powerful book. So that's where it started shifting with me, and it's basically an inside out approach to living and leading. And then I started getting ideas of the IOU, how I can incorporate that in my own thinking, and taking it to another level.
Which takes us to that IOU, which now is your own framework that you have kind of adopted or built upon that work with the 7 habits, with being very principle driven. Let's talk a little bit about maybe kind of how. Well, first let's talk about the framework, and then I want to talk about how maybe you started to develop and build on that, and eventually I want to get to then you decided to write a book about it.
Right. So IOU stands for inward, outward, upward, right? So everything starts inward. Who we are. The inward is being self-aware, understanding yourself. It's based, on the principle of self-identity, who we are. Outward is when you move out of your inward understanding and relationships. So inward living is really just it's sitting in a room by yourself thinking. This is your life. We live inwardly. We have our principles, our vision, our goals. It's not doing anything. It's just the definition of us. Then, as soon as you step into a room and there's another person, now you're outward living. Now it's about relationships. How is that interaction? Does your inward living match your outward living? And based on your inward living and your outward living, there's a byproduct. There's always a byproduct. Every conversation right now, there's a byproduct. Is it upward? Is it uplifting? Is it an upward success? And that's what we strive for, that upward living. So IOU stands for the inward, outward, upward living. Now, the opposite would be inward, outward, downward living. Sometimes our inward intentions don't match our outward living, and then it's downward where your life ship is sinking. I like to use the analogy of ships, where upward living, your ship is on course. But then there's also one in the middle, which I call IOW. I know, throwing a lot out, but it's inward, outward, wayward. It's just sort of not upward, not downward. It's just sort of living by default. So we're always striving for IOU, upward living, and how do we do that? So that's what developed a framework to help push us up and continually move to upward living. It's okay to be wayward, we're in that mode. It happens a lot, but we don't want to live there forever. We want to keep pushing ourselves to a higher level.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. I think the big key there obviously is that living with intention. You talked about, when it's wayward, it's just much more, that reactive, right? It's more of that responsiveness in terms of how you're going about things versus really being intentional about what you do. Now, let's maybe take that framework a little bit further and talk about how you go from one to the other, or maybe talk about some of the principles in each, so that as listeners, people are starting to maybe take that, the inward, the outward, and then the upward a little bit further in terms of their understanding.
Yeah. So, again, inward living, who you are, outward living, there's a byproduct. We hope it's upward, which one of the things that I try to capture around it is, what is upward living? Well, it's these 4 areas: peacefulness, happiness, healthiness, and excellence. Anything when we think about our goals and what we look for in life, you could put in one of those 4 areas, whether it's peace, whether it's happiness, whether it's being healthy, and excellence, being the best you can. So that's what we're pushing for, that upward living, PH2E, we call that. Again, the opposite would be, it's not peace, it's anxiety, right? There's your downward living. Do you get anxiety, not the peace? Is it happiness or unhappiness? Is it healthiness or unhealthiness? Is it excellence or ineffectiveness, right? So there's a big gap there, right? And we want to just keep, how do we push to that PH2E, the upward? And then there's the in the middle, right? It's not peace, it's not anxiety, it's just apathy. This is, where we may be. And not happiness, it's not unhappiness, it's just indifference. It's not healthiness, it's not unhealthiness, it's just unfit. Or it's not excellence or ineffective, it's just mediocrity. And that's where you start, we live a lot of our life in default. We go to work, right? We come home, we eat dinner, we put the TV on, we go to bed, and then we wake up and we do it again. And we get into this wayward living, that IOW. So, again, so pushing us. So how do we get out of that? How do we get out of that default mode, living with intention, like you said? And I know you use that a lot, intentional living. Again, that starts inwardly, knowing who we are. Our most important asset in our life is ourselves, right? It's taking care of ourselves, knowing ourselves. So we need to spend some time and look at what is our purpose, what is our vision, our mission, our principle, our personal vision. Excuse me. You can apply this to schools, you can apply this to family, but first start with yourself, and that's what we're the first book is really all about, is just knowing who you are and defining it. And you have to go to it. It doesn't come to you, right? That's the problem with this. Life comes to us. The outward world comes to our inward world, right? And we have to react to it. We have to take the time to look inwardly. And if we don't go to it, it'll never come to us. So it's really powerful when you really take the time to look inwardly and try to think about, what my vision and my personal mission is, principles, values, and goals. And then get that foundation, and then is my outward intentions matching it? And then when that happens, you'll get one of those areas of PH2E, guaranteed.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that so much. So let's talk a little bit more about PH2E, because I know there is an assessment that people can go and check out. It's a free assessment where they can kind of get an idea of where they are in each of those 4 areas. You actually, sticking with your nautical themes, you had told me earlier that it's kind of like a propeller. Maybe share a little bit of that, and let's talk about where people can get that assessment.
So think about how a propeller pushes a boat through the water, right? It's got 4 blades, this particular propeller. Some have 3. But let's say it has 4 blades and it's pushing through. But if one of those blades is bent or nicked, the boat's going to vibrate. It's not going to push the boat through effective. The boat starts vibrating, and then the engine could break down. Well, we all have a life propeller, which I like to call that, and each one of those blades is the PH2E. So one blade, it's peace, one's happiness, one's healthiness, and one's excellence. And we need to, look at, are there areas that we need to improve? So created this assessment called the PH2 Life Propeller Assessment, where you go on ph2e.com. It's free. And you answer questions yourself, and you don't know which category you're answering it for. So, you go through the questions, and it doesn't take that long. And then you'll get back a personalized results, your personal life propeller, if you will. And you see, wow, my peace is really down, or my healthiness is down, but I'm really thinking my excellence is high. I'm really focusing on improving and studying, but I'm neglecting certain areas. So it's just a nice way to look. It's a self-assessment for where you are in the PH2E Life Propeller category. And again, is that propeller pushing you through life at maximum speed and maximum force? Again, it's a way to look inwardly on your most important asset.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's great. And obviously, I mean, this is the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. So we love to talk about leadership here. And this is certainly really focused on that individual or that self. But you've got a new project coming out that now leans a little bit more into the school, a little bit more into the school leader and how these different principles really connect to them. Let's talk a little bit about that. And first, just share with me, I mean, Joe, what was it that made you say, okay, I've done this one book, now I want to go do another one that really targets schools and school leaders?
So the first book, IOU Life Leadership, and it really gets into these 12 essential life anchors. Again, a lot of nautical themes with PH2E and assessments and Euro Life Ship. But it really is a general about yourself, but it could be for self, family, team, or organization. But it wasn't specifically written for school districts. This next book, I specifically wrote it for leaders in schools, where it takes these life leadership, life anchors, into school anchors. They're the same anchors, but it's how you look at them. And when you put together, what your district or school or classroom 6 anchors, which is self-culture one. That's your overall culture of your brand and your vision. And then life vision. What's the vision statement? The purpose, passion, potential. What's the daily mission? The daily mission is what you do every day that has to drive instruction, match to your vision. What are the values? The school values, the school principles, and then the school goals. That's your inward, what I call your inward school map. And that's a great exercise for any leader, any team, to go through those 6 inward principles, those 6 school principles, and have discussions and develop them and then promote them and teach them to the kids and make it a solid unit. And that's how you build that inward map for culture. Then there are 6 outward school cultures, anchors. And that's about trust, communication, and those are great exercises as well. So you put the inward map and the outward map together, and then you have now your school strategic map. This is what's going to drive the school. It's going to be a map that we can, every stakeholder can use, and keep that culture raising higher and higher, to the highest level. So have that upward success. So that's what this new book is. It has questions that you can answer for each of these anchors. It's step by step. It has samples and examples of school strategic maps. And I'm very excited, hoping to get that out soon this year.
Yeah, outstanding. I think that's really a big piece right now, especially, obviously I work with schools all over the country right now, and everybody wants to talk about culture. Everybody really wants to lean into their culture. It's either, hey, we've got to do some stuff to fix our culture, or, hey, we feel really good about our culture, but we don't want to see our culture backslide, or those who are really good at it are really intentional about it. And I would say you guys fall into that category. They're able to do that because they're very clear about what it is that's important to them. And then they're very intentional about the work that they do. You said something to me earlier. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, just on that intention, if it's not intentional, it creates itself, right? The culture will create itself, and it may not
in the direction you want it to be.
Exactly. Right. So, and it's a shared development. You have to work on it. You have to have those discussions to create this intentional culture. And what's important is these are principles. It's not saying what the culture should be. Never get into that in this book at all. Everyone's unique. Every district, every environment, it's the principle, and then you define it. The team defines it. The leadership defines it. The teachers, the parents, etc.
Yeah. Well, and you, like I was getting ready to say, you shared something with me earlier that, here you are when we're recording this, it's still in January, and you guys are just coming back, and, just talking with some of your students, that your students know all of those principles. They know the mission and the vision and so forth of your school. And when you are intentional, when you are teaching that to your students, I think that's when there's so much more ownership of the culture. Maybe talk a little bit about some of the work you and your leadership team have done to make that happen.
Yeah. So again, it's happening, and it has to be simplified. This is a lot of times we have vision statements and they're a paragraph. We have these missions, and that's good to do, but you need to break it down to something that everyone can remember. So our vision statement, the short is community of learners, and it's real simple. We have the paragraph, but there's a lot in those few words. One of the outward principles is common language. So it's common language. Few words say a lot. So community, we define who the community is. That's the parents, teachers, leadership, board members. Community of learners, we're continuous improvement. The mission statement, if you ask any kid, it's lead and learn. Every decision we do has to be around leadership or learning, whatever we're doing. So we don't have roles in classroom, right? We don't have jobs. We have leadership roles. We don't do the announcements. The kids do the announcements. We pass over all the things that adults do to kids, and they shine in many ways, so that the child that might not be the highest in academics can be a leader and can be very successful, because we're giving them leadership roles. We're teaching them and showing them what does it mean to be a leader. Everyone's a leader in the school of themselves first, then lead with others, and then lead others. So those are the things and if you ask them what the core values are, everyone would know: dedication, respect, integrity, teamwork, and trust. Those are shared values that we develop. We start in pre-K, every grade up. And then the leadership principles are the 7 habits principles. So, be proactive, begin with the end in mind, put first things first, think win-win, synergize, listen first to understand, and then continuous improvement. So it's understandable, and everyone understands. So those are posted everywhere. You have to have symbols that represent it. So we have them embedded in the floors. They're in the tiles in the bathroom. There's stars. We use the star symbol, and each point on the star has meaning. And it's a lot of fun. The kids have it. The teachers create it. We have mission statements all over the school. Every classroom does their own mission statement. The office, the custodians, and they enjoy it. They sit around and say, what are we about? What do we want people to feel when they come into our classroom? And they hang that up, and they all sign it. And then when someone's out of line with the mission, all you have to do is point to it because they developed it. Very powerful stuff, and it's easy, it's fun, but it's creating this whole atmosphere of leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think a big word that you didn't say there, but that is so key, is just the amount of ownership there. The ownership from the kids, the ownership from the other adults in the organization. Sure, you are the one who has cast this vision, here's where I see us being, this is who I believe we can be, but because everybody else has taken ownership of that along the way, that's why you see that success continue to happen.
Yeah, it's we call our kids stars. So we have the teachers and star polishers, right? So we have star polisher team, teacher teams and student teams, but it's just systemic now. It just teachers take these principles and core values and just take them, and I'm just so excited and just proud of them and how they just keep taking it to the next level. Our administrators. Because they're principles, you can't disagree with them. There's no discussion about
right.
Being proactive, something we shouldn't be doing, or integrity, etc.
Yeah, no, that's outstanding stuff. I love that so much. So, our time has absolutely flown by. What an amazing conversation this one has been. Joe, we're at the point in the show where I'm going to ask you the same question I ask everybody. It's the only one scripted question that I ever ask here on Leaning Into Leadership. And you've shared so much already, but I just want to ask you, as the Leaning Into Leadership podcast, what might be something else you're doing right now to lean into leadership?
So again, I think it's just the mindset of continuous improvement, right? If you're looking to improve yourself, you're going to take yourself to the next level, and that should have a positive impact on others around the world. So this idea of just continuous improvement, again, it doesn't mean we're bad or we're not doing a good job. It's how do we get to that next level? And if we have that mindset, there's always discussion about how can we get better. So it's really not complaints. It's like, okay, here's an issue. How do we improve it? It's just that mindset. I'm having difficulty. How do I get better? So that mindset, and that's really our vision statement, a community of learners. How do we get better? How do we just become better learners? That just translates to leadership. I mean, we really are in a leadership age now where we have to be leaders of ourselves and leaders with others and leaders to others. And that's something I think we need to keep teaching our kids and just keep focusing that getting better. How do we become a better leader?
Outstanding stuff. I really appreciate that. Joe, people are going to want to get in touch with you. What's the easiest way for them to find you and to reach out?
Yeah, the website is iouliving.com, and there's a lot of free stuff on that. You can get the PH2E assessment. I have there's just a lot of information on there. Feel free to go there. You can subscribe to it and be on the list. So any podcasts or blogs that I do, we'll get them out to you. But all the materials will be out on that website. Outstanding
stuff. All right. Dr. Joe Famularo, thank you so much for joining me here on Leaning Into Leadership. All right, folks, that was a fantastic conversation. Again, really appreciate Joe for coming on the show. So much exciting stuff that he's got going on. So make sure you get down in the show notes and check out his information. I've got some links in there for you as well, so you can get connected to Dr. Joe. Now, it's time for a pep talk. So on the pep talk today, I want to talk a little bit about my last 8 or 9 days. I've had an incredibly busy 8 or 9 days. Now, I'm busy a lot. I travel a lot, but I will tell you this particular stretch was really kind of special. It began honestly on Thursday of the previous week. So let's go back maybe about 10 days from the day that this podcast episode is being released, and spent the morning with a couple of my principals that I support here in the Omaha area, just having some really deep conversations around, they had just had their external reviews, and, kind of talking about that process, talking about some personnel things and a few other things. Always fills me up, fills that bucket when I get an opportunity to spend time with those two gentlemen. Then I spoke virtually that afternoon to an audience through the Thrive Conference. Got in the car, drove to Columbus, Nebraska, and keynoted for the entire district there in Columbus. Man, Dr. Chip Kay and his crew are doing some amazing things up there in Columbus. They really, truly are. Got to work with the classified staff for about an hour and a half, which was really wonderful. Something I truly enjoy doing, working with our classified staff. I mean, I love pouring into our certified staff by all means, but not everybody pours into their classified staff, and I love that Dr. K is doing that. From there, into an airplane, off to Helena, Montana, spoke at the Montana Principals Conference, so secondary and elementary principal entities, came together. It was really wonderful to see that many school leaders in one place. I got to be the opening keynote, had some fantastic conversations, got to catch up with some old friends that I'd never met in person, and finally got to spend some time with. From there, back into a plane. By the way, it was -8 in Helena when I woke up that Sunday morning. -8. Brr. That's cold. So cold. Jumped in a plane, came home. 24 hours later, I'm back on a plane to Las Vegas. It was not -8 in Las Vegas, thank goodness. Got to spend a few days with my friends in Lincoln County School District in Nevada. I've been working with them for a couple of years. Pam Teal's got some really great things happening in that district. Always love it when I get to go out and just really pour into and support and learn from the leaders in Lincoln County. Then it was back in a plane and come home, and here I am back in Omaha. And I tell you all this not to just tell you my worldly travels, but rather to share this. In just that stretch alone, I had so many conversations with educators, so many conversations with people who are doing what matters and doing right by kids. Right now we are in a very politically charged climate, and we have been for a while. It's not just all of a sudden. It didn't just take place 2 weeks ago, right? This has been true for a long time. And whether we're talking about at the federal level or we're talking about at the state level, it is so easy for us to take our eye off the prize and to get pulled off to all these other things that are happening. Maybe bills that were in front of the legislative body. I had several people reach out to me and share a couple of bills that the state of Wyoming, my home state, had brought forward. I mean, just things that just make you shake your head. But ultimately, those are things we can't control. What we can control is how we choose to show up in front of our kids every day. What we can do is choose the energy we're going to bring and the focus that we're going to bring. I wrapped up my week yesterday with a conversation with a portion of the board for the North Carolina Mid-Level Educator Association. We're working on a project there, not ready yet to quite share what that project is. But I finished that conversation by thanking them for being such incredible champions for kids. They're being a champion for this project that we're working on as well. But ultimately, folks, this is the thing. As educators, we can allow ourselves to get distracted by all these other things that are happening, whether we're talking about political environment or parents or whatever. But what's happening in our classrooms is incredible. What's happening on behalf of kids is incredible, and we cannot lose sight of that. Right? Allow yourself to hear the noise, but don't allow yourself to get consumed by the noise. All right, let's stay focused on what truly matters, making a difference in the life of kids. Remember, we only get 9 months, right? We get 9 months to take a little person and make them a better little person in the course of that time, whether that's through third grade or science or physical education or band or whatever it is your medium happens to be. Our job is to take a little person and make them a better little person in that 9-month window of time. So don't allow those distractions to pull us away. Continue the great work you're doing. And so my challenge for you this week is really call it out when you see it. When you see great things happening in a classroom, call it out. When you see one of your peers doing amazing things, call it out, right? Make the effort to let people know you see them, you hear them, you value them, and you trust them, and you believe in the work that they are doing. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the work that is happening in our schools is truly awesome. And we need to celebrate it. We need to be the ones shouting it from the top of the roof so that we're not allowing all this other noise to tell our story. That's what I got for you this week. That was one heck of a rant, one heck of a ramble, and I'm all right with it. Everybody get out there and have a road to awesome week.